Hey everybody, once again it's me. Thank you, happy to be here. And this time I'm not testing out anything, but I'm here and I'm not taste testing anything, and I'm not trying out any new Linux anything. What I'm doing is let me go ahead and exit out of OBS. So I am actually here to talk about reliable backup options, I guess you could say. So what you can see on my desktop right now is Linux Mint. Now I'm still on my HP EliteBook 8440p that I bought used from a thrift store for it was like $7.85 or something like that. So we'll call it like $8.25, maybe $8.50 or something with tax. It didn't come with a hard drive, so I did have to put a hard drive on there, but you can buy hard drives pretty cheap if you buy them in bulk off of places like eBay. And it is a hard drive. It's not an SSD. This thing has platters and they move, they rotate. But for the purposes of what I'm doing here, it's fine. So I've got this computer and I'm just kind of hopping from distro to distro to distro. And I was downloading, I think I downloaded a couple of different distros this morning, trying to figure out what to shoot a video on today. And regardless of which one I chose, one of them, I think it was actually Slackware. Which I am interested in because I've used, I think, at least one version of Linux which was Slackware based, but it wasn't actually Slackware. So I was trying to install the actual Slackware, which, if I can remember things correctly, my memory's shot, so don't trust me on this, but I think it said like the most current release was sometime in 2024. I believe that's what it said. It might have been even earlier than that. So it doesn't seem to be a distribution that gets many updates these days, but I think it does have a following. And like I said, I had tried a version of Slackware in the past, and from what I can remember, it seemed to work out okay. Because I remember it had like this different download manager. I think it was called Slapget or Slapget, which is kind of a cool sounding name. So I've tried a version of Linux that was based on Slackware, but I hadn't tried the actual Slackware. So I installed it on this computer, and I just couldn't get things configured the way that I wanted them to. The installer is definitely, I don't want to say a relic, but it's something from the past, I believe. Like, it just doesn't seem to have all of the, like, a guided pathway to success, I guess you could say. Definitely had a lot of options from what I can remember. But I don't recall if it had anything on the screen that popped up that like gave a recommendation, like, hey, we checked your hardware capabilities and this is what we would recommend. Here's the options that you have. This is what we would recommend based on the computer that you're trying to install it on. I don't remember that coming up, and it was just slightly more complicated. I don't want to say it was like super complex, but I didn't have a whole lot of time, and so it just became a roadblock for me just in the amount of time that I had to search for a distribution, get it installed, figure out how the package manager worked, figured out if I can install a version of OBS that would run on it, figure out if I could get like Kdenlive installed on it, and I just felt like time was running short if I wanted to be able to get this video shot, get it edited, and possibly even uploaded tonight. So after a couple of hours into it, I just kind of scrapped it. But it got me thinking, about situations that I've run into in the past, and I haven't been doing this for very long, where a distribution gave me problems, and I didn't have I didn't have an alternative that I could immediately switch it over to, because the way I've been doing this, I've basically just been installing the operating system. The term I want to use, and I'm probably not using this term right, it would be bare metal, but basically like installing it on my computer, like wiping any traces of any previous OS installation and just overriding the whole thing with whatever new OS I decide to install on it. That's the whole purpose of why I bought this computer. And so I did that, and then I found that I was in a place where I was struggling with getting everything in the operating system working the way I would like it to work, and then deciding that I should probably scrap it and maybe try to find something else in a hurry to switch to, so I could create some content for this channel. And I didn't end up doing that, but what I ended up through me thinking over what am I going to do? What's the next option I have? And like searching DistroWatch to see if there was some random distribution I could choose from, so I could have something to shoot content with. I installed Linux Mint, which is what you're looking at on my screen here. This is the desktop for Linux Mint running XFCE. And I had that on this little USB thumb drive, and I've since labeled it Mint in metallic marker, so hopefully it doesn't rub off or anything. But I decided to install Linux Mint because I've always had success with Linux Mint. It's a very popular Linux operating system, and I can kind of see why, because it does just kind of work, and it does seem very familiar. Like if you look at my screen, here's what I would call coming from a Windows background, my start button. Here's like where I can find applications are sorted into categories, and I could always just go to all applications. I got a list of every application that's installed on here. I haven't installed any games on here because I just installed the operating system today, but I'm pretty sure if I installed a game, it would probably create a new category just for games, if I can remember correctly, because I have used Linux Mint a few times. But this is just what I'm going to say. This is a very reliable. This is a very good tool for somebody to have if they're going to be going down the route that I'm going, where you're just like throwing things at your computer, seeing what works and what doesn't work, just new operating systems. Because maybe you'll like stumble onto something fantastic, but in the process, you might also encounter some barriers, some roadblocks to your success. And so why I'm saying that this is a really good tool and why I've permanently marked this as Mint is because Mint does just seem to work. I don't know if not exciting is a good term to use, because anytime you have success, I think that's exciting. But it's really very popular. Another term I don't want to use because I think it gives negative connotation, or whatever the word is, would be common. It's a very common operating system, but that's just because it works. It does work. I have a lot of success running Linux Mint, and I installed it, and it just worked. And I thought, you know what? And I just had this, and it was unlabeled. I just pulled this out of my bag, and I think I was keeping this on here for a reason, and this was the reason. I discovered the reason today. So I permanently labeled this as Mint. And this is probably something I would recommend if you're going to distro hop, if that's a term. I mean, I know distro hopping is a term, but if you are going to just hop from distribution to distribution like I do, get yourself a thumb drive. This was an ONN thumb drive, ONN, that you can buy at your local Walmart. I went there because it's convenient. I have a Walmart that's very close to my house, and this was under $5. I think it's a 32 gigabyte, I mean, it's hard to find anything smaller than that these days. I think they do still make 16 gigabyte thumb drives, and 16 gigabytes is more than enough. This is 32 gigabyte is overkill for this OS and its installation. But it was worth it. I mean, it was under $5, and I'm just going to keep it like this. I don't know. Maybe I'll overwrite it with a newer version of Linux Mint. Maybe a couple of versions from now, just in case things are dramatically different with the version that they have, to where it makes more sense to replace what's on here already. But this one just works. I installed it. It discovered my the Wi-Fi capabilities of my computer immediately. I was able to connect. I was able to download updates. It just works. So this, I think, is a really handy tool to have. It's just a USB thumb drive, and then your choice of Linux distribution. This one is Mint. I'm just going to keep it as Mint. I do have a lot of success with Kali Linux. That's with a K-A-L-I Linux. I did have a thumb drive that I installed it on, that I put the installable ISO on that thumb drive, and I picked up it was an Intel based, like a netbook. I won't call it a netbook because it seemed more capable. It was somewhere between like a netbook and an actual laptop. It was smaller, but it had way more. I feel like it had way more hard drive space than what you'd find in other netbooks, and it wasn't a Chromebook. Although you can install Linux on a Chromebook, believe it or not, I've done it, and I didn't install, or I didn't configure, what is it, Chromium or whatever, to run Linux through Chrome OS. I found a way, and you can YouTube this, to basically override Chrome OS and get Linux installed onto the computer, so it just boots. And I think I used Linux Mint, the XFCE, which is this desktop version of Linux Mint, to install on that Chromebook, and it works. I was successful. So so I'm keeping this as Linux Mint, kind of as my rescue. Kali Linux, as I said, is also a good one. I installed that one to a Intel-based, I don't know if you would call it a netbook. It's definitely got, I can't remember how big the drive is on that. It's like a 32 gigabyte drive or something like that. It's just a super thin, small netbook. I don't know what they're called. But, and it did have, I think whoever sold it to me had found some way to install like Windows 11 on it or something, but I'm sure it wasn't running very well, considering the thing has like 4 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, and it's not upgradable. This laptop is like super tiny and super thin, and I'd be afraid to take it apart. So I'm not even trying to get in there and upgrade the RAM, although I think I did look it up. And I'm pretty sure it said that the RAM was soldered on to the motherboard and there was no upgrading it. Unless you want to get in there, I suppose, and take the motherboard apart and desolder memory components from the motherboard and solder on new ones. I'm not doing that. So, but it is enough. It's enough. The processor and the RAM that comes soldered onto the motherboard of that little netbook is enough for it to run Kali Linux. And it runs it pretty good. I mean, I not only installed Kali Linux and everything that comes with Kali Linux, because Kali Linux, it seems like, is very much targeted towards people who are interested in like internet security. So it comes with a bunch of like different security tools, like pre-installed, pre-configured, whatever term you want to use. And I don't think there's any way to like filter through them. If there was, I didn't bother with it. But it comes like stacked with a bunch of stuff that I'm never going to use. but it runs and it runs well, and it does. I think it was the Synaptic package manager that I was able to get installed on there, and I was able to install Kpatience, which is Solitaire, and I think I even installed Kdenlive on there, but I'm not going to try to use it's got 4 gigabytes of RAM. I'm not going to try to use that computer to do any kind of video editing. I'm pretty sure I uninstalled it shortly after. I just wanted to see if I could. But yeah, Kali Linux is definitely, I think, another good option probably to have on. I think they even mentioned that on their website, is that like part of their, I guess, target audience are not only people who, I think it's like people who are super interested in security, what are they, ethical hackers, which I guess are probably people who just test systems out for their vulnerabilities, and maybe when they find one, not to exploit it, but to relay information back to the people who created the operating system that they were able to find some kind of issue with, and report it back to those people so that they can apply a fix and make sure that that opening isn't left, so that bad people with bad intentions can get in there and exploit it or whatever. So Kali Linux, I installed the Synaptic Package Manager. I got some packages installed on there, but that's also a good option for something like this, I feel. I didn't know that I had Mint on here to begin with. I just popped it in this computer after my attempt at Slackware. I got Slackware successfully installed on here, but I just didn't have much success, just because the installation process was way more involved, is the first word that came to mind, but I mean, difficult also came to mind, but I don't think that's the case. I think it requires more knowledge on what it is that it's doing. Linux Mint is pretty streamlined. Like it's pretty easy to get through a Linux Mint installation, just to get it to work how you want it. And the installations are usually pre-configured as far as the desktop environment. I chose to put my version of Linux Mint, which has the XFCE desktop, as my backup option, just because XFCE is a lighter weight desktop environment. I'm just throwing terms out here that I do have some understanding of, but I probably don't have enough to be using these terms. But basically, a lighter weight just means it uses less system resources. Like you don't need as much RAM, or it doesn't eat into your RAM as much as some of the other desktop environments might. But yeah, so when you download Mint, one of the options that it gives you is to choose your desktop environment before you even download the ISO, I believe, the installation file. So this installer is just for Linux Mint with the XFCE desktop environment, and you can see what it looks like. XFCE looks a lot like Windows to me, so that's the one that I chose. Here I am in OBS. You can see me on the screen. But that's the one that I chose, so that's the one that's on here, and that's the one that I'm just going to keep on here. Again, this USB thumb drive was less than $5, and I think it's going to pay off. I mean, it already has. I had to use it today to kind of put this computer back in a state that I could even make this video. I mean, I probably could have figured Slackware out if I had enough time, but I was trying to do everything in one day, and I had other things to do today, and I just didn't give myself enough time to get it all done. But with the help of this USB thumb drive and having Linux Mint with the XFCE desktop on here ready to go, in the end, when I decided, hey, at this point I just need to shoot something because most of the day's gone, I popped this in the computer, powered the computer on. The installer, well, it loaded into the live environment. If you don't know what a live environment is, it looks a lot like this. Without installing anything, it just runs off the USB drive. You gives you a chance to kind of click around, see how you feel about how Linux Mint works. And then when you're ready, I think the live environment has an icon, I want to say it's up here in the left-hand corner, that says something like Install Linux Mint, and you just double-click on that. It launches the installer. You tell it how you want it to install. I believe it gives you options, like pretty standard Linux installs will ask you things like, do you want to override an existing installation of some other operating system? Like, let's say if you had Windows installed on your computer and you didn't want to get rid of Windows, you just wanted to have two operating systems to choose from every time you turn the computer on. Maybe sometimes you want to load Windows, maybe sometimes you want to load Linux. It gives you that option during installation with a lot of these distributions. It'll just kind of ask you, like, are you installing directly onto the hard drive and overriding everything, and this is just going to be the operating system that you're going to have moving forward, or are you wanting to keep what you're running on there now and install like a secondary operating system? That way you'll have two, and then when you open up or when you start up your computer, it'll ask you, do you want to boot into Windows or do you want to boot into Linux Mint? So yeah, like I popped this in there. I turned the computer on. This computer, I have the startup like in the BIOS. I told it that I always want it to boot from USB first. So my computer always checks to see if there's anything in the USB drive, and if there is, it checks to see if there's a live USB or an installation file that it can run before it attempts to load anything off of the hard drive. So because of that, I was just able to pop this in, turn the computer on. It launched the live environment for Linux Mint. I had my little icon to install Linux Mint up here, clicked on that, went through the installation process, popped this out, restarted the computer. Actually, I think I picked the option to restart, and as part of that process, Linux Mint will tell you, oh, before we finish, take this out. So it'll prompt you when to take this out. So take this out, and then click continue or whatever the option was. And you click continue, it shuts down, restarts, and you've got Linux Mint. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I know, again, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you've probably heard me say this before, but I can get long-winded when I'm explaining certain things. I'll try to get better. I do try to script things out sometimes, but I just wanted to throw this in here because I didn't have a new operating system that I just installed on here ready to go. I thought Slackware was what this video was going to be about, and I might do a video on Slackware in the future. I think I just have to get more preparation time, just so I can get familiar with how it works and just make sure everything is in working order before I shoot that video. But for the time being, I threw this in there, put on Linux Mint. This computer's run Linux Mint on it before. Put it in Linux Mint, got it running, and then I thought, well, thank goodness I had this so I could at least get this up and running. And while I've got it up and running, why don't I just shoot a video about this? Linux Mint is good. I actually do like Linux Mint. I shoot these videos just because there's a sea or an ocean, however you want, whatever word you want to use to describe it, this universe of Linux. There's just so much variety that you can choose from, and that's why I make these videos, is just because I'm still new to this, and so I'm exploring. And as I'm exploring, I'm shooting content about what I'm discovering, I guess you could say. So that's pretty much what all these things are about. When you see me shoot a video about a new operating system that I discovered, new for me anyway. These are all things that are new for me, people. So in case anybody gets confused when I say new, that doesn't mean that this is like brand new, never seen before software. It just means that it's brand new to me. I've never touched it before, and so I'm going to shoot content on it. But yeah, this this could save you, especially if you only have one computer and you need to be able to do something with it, and it crashes and maybe it doesn't boot back up or something, but at least it like turns on. If it turns on and it beeps, that's usually a good sign that the computer is still alive. It might not be a good sign that anything on your hard drive is recoverable, but it could be. I mean, but at least the computer, like its main components, the things that make it work, should still be there, and you could at least pop something like this in. And even if you don't install it, you can just run Linux Mint off of this and explore the internet or do whatever you want to do with your computer at that time. So let's say if you are like a lot of people now and you store your files to a remote drive, like a Google Drive, is that what it's called? And all you need in order to access whatever file you have stored on there is access to that Google account. But you'd rather do it, from an actual computer than your phone or something. What you can do is you can just pop something like this in. So let's say it's like a resume or something you need to like print out. So you go to your library, and they don't want you putting this in their computer, but you've brought your laptop. It just won't boot up into Windows or whatever, and you've got that resume saved to your Google Drive, and all you need is internet access in order to access that file. You'll print it out from the library's printer, and then you'll run it over to your potential employer. So with something like this, you just pop it in your own computer. It'll boot up. As long as you don't have some weird configuration using some kind of networking card that it's never seen before, it probably will find your Wi-Fi card. It'll tell you whatever Wi-Fi networks are within range of the computer. You can hop on that Wi-Fi. You can open up a browser, get into your Google Drive, and hopefully, if your library allows you to, print out a copy of your resume or whatever, and then run it over to your potential employer. So anyway, that's just a scenario that I thought up in my own head, but I think it works for what I'm trying to express here, and that is like this thing, it just saved me today because it got this computer back up and running to a point that I can record a video. And I would just think that in certain situations where you're in a pinch or something like that, this could work out for you as well. And I guess the other thing is I don't think I've ever made a video on Linux Mint before, and mostly it's just because I think Linux Mint is super popular and people already know about it. I think my videos are mostly about things that are new to me, and so I try to focus on things that I think are a little slightly less well known. But having something like this is really good, and Linux Mint does just work. I do like Linux Mint a lot. The reason why I have it set for the XFCE desktop environment is just because it's a little lower on resources, and I think it'll run on anything. I've also installed Linux Mint with the XFCE desktop on a Google Chromebook. It took some effort, but it worked. But yeah, I would say just grab yourself a thumb drive, and even if you're doing it just to check out and see what Linux is all about, just go ahead and get something like Linux Mint or Kali Linux. That's Kali. Linux is Linux, and just run a live environment off of the USB so you can check it out and see what it's all about. It's pretty. I mean, a lot of these things you'll have access to. Certain things that you've seen me do, you might not be able to. Like, I'm pretty sure you won't be able to do OBS. I had to download and install that. That doesn't come on this. Although I think there are some live environments where you might be able to get a version of OBS on there. It probably is going to be like an older version of OBS or one that is very light on resources, maybe one that's been modified. I don't know if that exists or not, but I'm pretty sure I have run OBS off of a live environment before. I don't know if it was eLive or which one, because I'm pretty sure I shot a video about that operating system. I didn't shoot a video of me running it in a live environment because I actually installed the full version of the OS on this computer. But yeah, but you can find Linux ISOs that you can install on a USB drive that do come with some software packages pre-installed, preloaded, and ready to go. And they might include things like OBS Studio or Kdenlive, and things that you could just use to produce video with, record and produce video with, without actually having to install anything on your system. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and you'll see me in the next video. Peace.